From January 1st all the way up until the present day, the craziest thing that has happened so far in the 2024 calendar year as it relates to college football has been the move of running backs coach Tony Alford from Ohio State to Michigan. And no, despite the fact that this is April Fool's Day, happy April Fool's Day, by the way, that's not an April Fool's joke. Tony Alford, a few weeks ago, went from the Ohio State Buckeyes, from Columbus, Ohio, as their running backs coach, to being the running backs coach for the Michigan Wolverines in Ann Arbor. You know, going from one aisle, one sideline of the game, to another aisle and the opposite sideline of the game. It was crazy, no doubt about it. And Ohio State immediately, as one should do and as one would expect them to do, all the way late in the 2024 preseason, in the month of March, they went out and they started looking for candidates to fulfill that vacancy. And it took them longer than many expected, than I expected, and I think longer than they would have liked. But they have landed on a candidate who I think is very qualified for the position, someone who's a great recruiter, a great developer, and someone who I'm going to have to get used to because he came from Oregon, and I've only recently, as of last year, started diving into the staffs of Oregon, Washington, UCLA, and USC as before they weren't Big Ten schools. But Oregon running backs coach Carl Locklyn, now former Oregon running backs coach, is the new running backs coach about Ohio State. And we are going to talk about this hiring, what it means for Ohio State in the short term, in the long term, and why it's a good hire, at least in my opinion. Welcome back, fellow football fanatics. It's your host, College Football with Sam. Before we dive any deeper, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and click the notification bell so that we can get into the algorithm as a community, so that more people can join us, more people can hit that subscribe button and click the notification bell, so that we can hit 20,000 subs and beyond. At 20,000 subscribers, I will be doing a giveaway. And one of my goals for this channel is that we hit 20,000 subscribers before a single game in the 2024 season kicks off. So if you can help me do that by, again, liking, subscribing, and clicking the notification bell so that you can get notified when all of my content, whether it's Ohio State football or Big Ten football related or just college football related, pops up, you can see it and watch it. And also share this video around and comment your thoughts down below. All of this helps this channel grow and also helps me get different perspectives and content ideas from you all. A lot of the work that's done on this channel is inspired by things that you comment, and the progress that we have made here on College Football with Sam is due in large part to you guys. And I'm being serious when I say that. So thank you for the support. Thank you for that, for subscribing, liking this video. And if you want to go the extra mile and support the channel, you can check out my Patreon page or my merchandise stores, which are linked in the description and at the pinned comment at the top of the comment section. Thank you to my Patreon members for sponsoring this channel and video. If you're an All-American or Heisman member, you do get occasional bonus content, which will ramp up from about weekly or bi-weekly to probably multiple times a week, starting around the summer, a month, 2 or 3 months before the regular season kicks off. And if you're a Heisman member for 6 months, which one of you, Crash2488, is about to hit, you'll get signed College Football with Sam merchandise. But thanks to all of you for sponsoring this video and channel, and I will read off your names at the end of the video, as is now customary. But let's get back down to business and talk about Carlos Locklyn, who was previously the running backs coach at Oregon, and he also served in roles at Western Kentucky, where he was their running backs coach. He was the director of high school relations at Florida State under Mike Norvell in his first year in 2020, and same goes at Memphis in 2019. And in 2018, he was an offensive analyst. In 2017, he was a weight room assistant. So he's been with Mike Norvell for a long time. And before then, he was an offensive coordinator and also at times shared the role of defensive coordinator in high schools around the country. So very experienced with high school football, has a big pipeline to recruit, very relational guy, as shown by his resume and also the way that he recruits and the cohesiveness that specifically Oregon's running back room has had over the previous few seasons. In 2022 and 2023, he was the Ducks running backs coach, and he coached Bucky Irving, Noah Whittington, and Jordan James. Whittington didn't get to play much this season, not because he isn't a good player, but he just got crowded out. Oregon's running back room was amongst one of the deepest in the country this past season. In 2022, Whittington had 779 rushing yards, 5 rushing touchdowns, a receiving touchdown, and he averaged 5.6 yards per carry. He only had 146 rushing yards this year and 2 rushing touchdowns, and he only played in 3 games against Texas Tech, Hawaii, and Colorado. I don't know if he got injured or what went on. I wasn't following Oregon football as closely as Big Ten schools last season, though more closely than other schools. But ultimately, Jordan James and Bucky Irving were the running backs that shined for the Ducks. Jordan James exploded on the field with 11 rushing touchdowns, 759 rushing yards, and he had over 100 receiving yards and 1 receiving touchdown. 5'10", 205. He's fast. He's powerful. He is a future first-team All-Big Ten running back and potentially an All-American running back, and he's going to be starting for the Ducks this season at that position. Bucky Irving, who's declared for the 2024 NFL Draft, he had 1,180 yards last season, 11 rushing touchdowns. He averaged 6.3 yards per carry on the ground. He had 2 receiving touchdowns and 413 receiving yards as well. And he only fumbled 2 times per ESPN last season and only lost 1 of those fumbles, and that was in a game against Utah. Oregon last year went 12-2. Their only losses were to Washington, who was the second best team in the country. And I think while power rankings are accurate for a lot of teams, I think that Washington, last year's Washington, with Kalen DeBoer, Roma Dunze, Michael Penix Jr., Jalen Polk, very fun team to watch, and an elite Joe Moore Award offensive line. They're underrated in power rankings. The way that they systematically took teams apart was not a fluke, not even close. They played in a lot of close games for sure, but I think some of that was almost more by design than anything else. That was an awesome team to watch. One of the more entertaining teams to watch in my mind over the past few seasons of college football. Oregon beat everyone else. In fact, they dominated everyone else on their schedule outside of Texas Tech, and they beat Liberty in the Fiesta Bowl by 39 points, where Bucky Irving had a great game. Oregon's rushing attack has been a staple of the program for the past 2 seasons, all of which have been under Dan Lanning, who will be entering his 3rd year with the Ducks. Oregon ran for 5.9 yards per carry in 2023, and in 2022, they averaged 5.5 yards per carry, with 34 rushing touchdowns in 2022 and 33 this season. So that's something that you can't ignore. And part of that's because of the offensive line, which Locklyn has actually had a hand in recruiting a few 4-star offensive linemen and 4-star running backs as well. So he's developed at a high level. He's a key recruiter and an elite developer. You see this with how Bucky Irving runs, with how Jordan James runs, and with how Noah Whittington performed at the Group of 5 and formerly Power 5 level in 2021 and 2022 respectively. Hopefully he has a bounce back year this season at Oregon, if he hasn't transferred out or if he isn't going to transfer out. But these are requirements to coach at Ohio State. And I think overall, this is an Ohio State level hire. He's one of the few running backs coaches that could compare to Tony Alford, given the development and given the recruiting history. I don't know if I'd rank him as high as Alford, but I've said that in other videos, both for Ohio State and also in regards to Michigan's hiring of him. He's one of the best running backs coaches in the country. But this was a great get. It was. I think Carlos Locklyn will blend well with the staff. Oregon the past 2 seasons functioned more like an SEC and Big Ten program, especially in 2023. So he knows how to compete and recruit and develop in such an environment, and I think he'll be a very great addition. This is a good hire by Ryan Day and company. Now, of course, the running backs coach is just one part of the running back group because the players are important. If Carlos Locklyn was hired and let's say this running back room was totally barren, only true freshmen and 3 stars, this would be lauded as a great hire, but there wouldn't be the same excitement in the running back room, regardless of whether who was going to be hired or regardless of who was going to be hired this season for Ohio State's running backs coach position. There was going to be excitement about the 2 starters, the 2 key contributors at this position in Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. And you also have Dallin Hayden, who's returning, and I expect him to see limited snaps and contribution this season as well to lighten the load. You don't want to overwork Henderson or Judkins. These are key players, and it helps to have 2 elite running backs and not just one. Look at Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum for Michigan in 2022, or Hassan Haskins and Blake Corum for Michigan in 2021, when both running backs were healthy. That rushing attack was vicious. It absolutely was. And when Corum was injured for a time in 2021, or again, Corum being injured for a time in 2022, late 2022, the run game did have its ups and downs. I do believe that with Corum's power, Michigan probably would have beaten TCU even with the pick sixes and holding everything else constant, because TCU was physical in their run defense, and Donovan Edwards in 2022 was not a physical back. He was a speed and space back. Michigan could have used that physicality. But injuries are a part of the game, so it is what it is. And in 2021, a healthy Corum would have helped Michigan be more explosive in the ground game, but Haskins was more of the power back that season. And thankfully, I think Corum got injured in the Michigan State game. After that MSU loss, Michigan won out, and the next loss that Michigan suffered in 2021 was to Georgia. And it didn't matter if Corum and Haskins were healthy or not. Georgia was just that much better than Michigan that season. That's just an example. To keep the running back room healthy, which it has not been healthy for the past 2 seasons. Williams has been banged up in 22, 23, and also 21 as well. Henderson's been banged up in 22 and to a lesser degree in 23. The running back room needs to stay healthy, especially the top 2 running backs. And it helps that you have Dallin Hayden, that you have Quinshon Judkins and Henderson, those 2 starting, and James Peoples, highly touted true freshman, coming in out of high school. Having that much talent in the running back room with a great running backs coach to work with, to train you, to mentor you, that's important. That's critical. Ohio State can pick up right where they left off, really, because of the hire that they made. And they have the best running back room in the country. Henderson and Judkins alone combined for over 2,000 rushing yards last year and over 25 touchdowns. And Ohio State's offensive line this year, even if you take a super pessimistic approach to the work that Justin Fry does and the job that he does, and you think that he doesn't recruit well, doesn't develop well, you think everything the worst about him, based off of returning production and incoming transfers, really transfer and Seth McLaughlin alone, this offensive line should improve compared to last year. And Ohio State's offensive line last year was better than Ole Miss's offensive line last year, especially toward the end of the season. I mean, even Judkins at times last season couldn't get big gains on the ground, and he didn't average the same amount of yards per carry as he did in 2021, partially because of injury, but also his offensive line did not perform at a very high level. And Ohio State, you have Donovan Jackson, you have Luke Montgomery, you have Josh Fryer, you have Carson Hinsman and Seth McLaughlin battling it out for the center position. You have talented offensive linemen, and now Judkins has someone who can help take the load off if need be. You have two elite running backs, who are in the top 10 of all running backs, possibly in the top 5, or maybe 1 and 2, the top 2 running backs in the country. They also had over 25 rushing touchdowns last season, and if my memory serves me correctly, Henderson averaged almost 6 yards per carry. Judkins averaged just over 4 yards per carry, which is compared to his 5.7 yards per carry that he averaged in 2022. Judkins also had 2 receiving touchdowns, and Henderson didn't have any receiving touchdowns, but he had 229 receiving yards. So they can be a threat through the air and on the ground as well. This is a loaded running back room. That combined with a great hire in Carlos Locklyn, that's going to pay off not just in the short term, but I think in the long term as well. And given what Ohio State has in terms of resources, Oregon has resources as well, but given what Ohio State has in resources and prestige, and also how they've been recruiting at the running back position, I imagine that Ohio State, as long as they want Carlos Locklyn, they are going to hold on to him unless he wants to become a coordinator, which it seems like, based off of where he's heading, he'll get there eventually. But how long that takes, we can't worry about that right now. I think this will pay short-term and long-term dividends. This hiring will. And as for just the players, this is going to be an exciting year to watch the Ohio State running back room. Thank you all for watching this video, and before we close out, I want to give a shout out to my Patreon members. Thanks to Crash2488 for sponsoring this channel and video as a Heisman member. Thanks to Spencer Bringhurst, Chris Lane, and SFS Inverted for sponsoring this channel and video as All-American members. And thanks to Will Loftus, John Lynn, Roaming Gnome, Matthew Sale, Austin Christmas, and Janisha Cockrell for sponsoring this channel and video as all conference members. Have a great day, guys, and I will see you all soon. Bye-bye.